It was Francis Bacon who first said, "Imagination was given to man to compensate him for what he is not, a sense of humor to console him for what he is." It's 2019, and Dean Ambrose is done and dusted with the WWE. 2018 had seen the long-time babyface fan favourite come back from a life-threatening MRSA infection. Well liked by fans for his funny promos and character work, Ambrose stood out as a scrappy, eccentric babyface in a sea of often monotonous talent and promo cutters. Sure, he was pretty goofy, but he carried it off with charm and humour, and while he'd never been pushed to the same heights as his Shield brothers Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, he was still a prominent figure in the promotion. When Reigns had to take a step back from wrestling due to the return of his leukemia, WWE decided to turn Ambrose heel, afflicting him with a tasteless promo regarding Reigns' condition that Ambrose himself was uncomfortable with. Fair enough. Due to the negative reception, WWE pivoted and attempted to restore the funny guy side of Ambrose in heel form, essentially making light of his own numerous health issues by turning him into a crazed germaphobe. Gas masks, vaccines, you name it, he had it all. Needless to say, after years of creative frustration, Ambrose had reached his final straw, and seeing New Japan and Impact Wrestling grow, as well as the impending arrival of AEW, he decided to cut his ties and start fresh beyond the gates of sports entertainment and into the professional wrestling wilderness. Before his babyface work in the WWE, Jon Moxley was an edgelord on the indies, getting busted up horribly in bloodbath garbage matches for CZW, and doing grim, grimy heel work in promotions such as Dragon's Gate USA. This initially continued in the WWE, with a surprisingly dark, dramatic feud with William Regal in FCW, before playing a borderline creepy villain and mouthpiece for the Shield. Needless to say, by the end of his run with the WWE, it was clear he was itching to return to harder-hitting wrestling and character work than the comedic corner Vince McMahon had painted him into. So fast forward to now, Jon Moxley is the top heel in AEW. He is the world champion. The promotion largely revolves around him, and the promotion is on a worrying downward slide. You have fans, die-hard, ride or die AEW fans essentially begging Tony Khan to cut Moxley's title reign short and get the belt on someone, anyone else. All that fan interest and connection, all that name value Moxley/Ambrose once had, is gone. Goodwill out the window. This is AEW World Title Reign number 4, and it is wholly unlike the prior 3. Now, Moxley is the head of the Death Riders. Oh my goodness. A team of misfit sadists raising hell and, put this in air quote marks, changing the industry. Let's look at his henchmen. Cesaro, an aging, work-rate maestro with a sea of impressive, crowd-pleasing moves, generally likable, but a very weak promo, severely lacking in overall charisma. Due to his ring work though, Cesaro was nearly always much better off as a babyface. Pac, mean-mugging, intense, and jacked. Pac seems like a more logical fit. But he's also a high flyer, and the fact he often takes a year, seemingly, to even go for his big jumps and dives mid-match is completely against the gritty, supposedly grounded in reality cruelty and brawling assault style of the faction overall. He also seemingly, allegedly, conveniently hightails it back to the UK almost whenever doing the JOB might be on the cards. These recurring absences completely stunted his growth in AEW from the get-go, with many largely forgetting now that there was a time early on in the promotion where he seemed poised for the main event and a world title run or two. Alright, so Cesaro and Pac, maybe they're not the most perfect fits, but they are talented wrestlers. So let's get to the huge problem here. Wheeler Yuta, a twink jobber, with a voice so whiny he makes Seth Rollins sound like James Earl Jones. Scrawny, bland, and uneventful, Yuta is about as intimidating as Spike Dudley, but half as entertaining. And frankly, regardless of what the marks at Cultaholic or whatever say, he does not even have good work rate on his side. As he strikes, he's selling, and his facial expressions in the ring are nearly always laughable. A horrid fit for what is supposedly meant to be a menacing heel faction. and it only gets worse from there. Marina Shafir, Mrs. Roderick Strong, apparently, that's something I learned when I was putting this video together. One of the biggest jokes in the whole promotion. Owner of perhaps the single worst promo in AEW's still young history.
You don't know me, you don't know me, you don't know me.
Whose presentation as a shoot fighter badass is highly questionable when you discover her professional MMA record is 1-2 in Bingo Hall promotions. Not exactly Amanda Nunes, is she? And who is so unbelievably cack-handed and unnatural in the ring that AEW have not permitted her to wrestle on TV in goodness knows how long. And yet, male talents are expected to utterly humiliate themselves by selling for this woman. And for all you heroes out there saying that a female competitor with some combat training could whoop a male competitor, please go ahead, take a break from this video and take a look at what happened when Claressa Shields, an actually high-level women's combat athlete, thought it would be a good idea to have a cheeky sparring session with a male fighter. One of the biggest problems here with the Death Riders is that none of them, bar maybe Pac, are a good fit for what's meant to be a dangerous crew of wrecking balls. Had Moxley, say, picked up a heel-turned-FTR to be his wrestling traditionalist tag team, saved Big Bill from the Jericho Vortex to be the resident big man, and picked up Brody King and Buddy Matthews from House of Black without Malachi Purgatory, you'd have a team that looked pretty menacing and convincing, a gang of big, bad, rough and tough heavyweight men. That, let's be honest, you would not want to run into under any circumstances in reality. They look dangerous. Instead, it's Moxley, plus some mid-card never-wases that he's good friends with. And that's before we get to Moxley himself. The reason Vince McMahon boxed him into that goofball corner is because, frankly, it suits him. He's over-the-top facial expressions. He's hokey, spazzy mannerisms. His bizarre approach to brawling. His slightly slurred, brain-damaged speech patterns. All of it together was often just kind of funny to watch. And repackaging Ambrose after the Shield split as a gutsy, dangerous, but very funny babyface was the right call. It was a role that suited what he brought to the table, and one that got him major fan support. Moxley has since gone on record to express his frustration with how he was booked in WWE as a sillier character. The fact is, WWE's only failure was jobbing him out so much when he was hot with crowds in 2014 and 2015, plus that heel turn that never should have happened near the end of his run. Overall, the babyface role they cast him in was perfect for applying his style to their product at the time. Since leaving, Moxley has fully embraced his dreams of how wrestling should look and how he wants to look within it. The laughs are no more as he's gone hook, line and sinker into the skin-shredding sadism of his dangerous deathmatch days once more. From getting cut up on dirty indie mats with GCW menace to society, no literally, he's actually a convicted bank robber, you probably already knew that, Nick Gage, to blading his forehead time and again in AEW, including off the back of light, everyday moves like Hiroshi Tanahashi's sling blade. You know, come to think of it, maybe the reason Moxley gigged was in the name of that move. Moxley's aversion to PG and the more commercialized WWE style has left him seemingly addicted to excessive self-mutilation, supposedly suffering for his so-called art. The oddball behavior, the busted forehead almost every week, the refusal to consistently sell his opponents as offense. Moxley appears to have spent far too much time studying Bruiser Brody. But where Brody genuinely did look and behave like a maniac, with enormous size and presence, and convincing, often unsettlingly chaotic brawling, Moxley, while in very good shape at the moment, is fairly standard in size and look, nowhere near the wild man beast that Brody was. When it comes to being a hard man, well, there's plenty of footage of Moxley throwing fits over losing amateur BJJ tourneys to everyday people. If something like that had happened to Brody, say if there'd been some jiu-jitsu tournaments in the 80s, he'd turned up and got schooled by an office worker, or anyone for that matter. If this happened to Brody, any other wrestler, their career would have been over on the spot. They would have been laughed out of every promotion in the United States. Watching Moxley be a tough guy, when it's clear outside of kayfabe that he's from the CM Punk level of combatability, immediately makes the whole show look like a farce. On top of that, his promos since moving into this Death Riders angle have been nonsensical, at best, on a good day. Dirt sheets have suggested Moxley's new shtick was inspired by Rumper Stumper, an infamous Australian indie flick starring Russell Crowe about neo-Nazis in Melbourne. And needless to say, white supremacy just doesn't fly on network TV these days, so Moxley and friends awkwardly skirt around their inspired ideology, all while randomly having an Asian twink in amongst their ranks, which, for anyone who's actually seen Rumper Stumper, is hilariously ironic. Now look, a Moxley heel turn last year could have made sense. Maybe. He spent some time in New Japan, where he held the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship for a few months. Maybe he could have returned to AEW inspired by the promotion's strong style roots. Maybe he could have returned to AEW inspired by New Japan's strong style roots, looking to purge AEW of anyone too silly or too weak to match up to his newfound wrestling philosophy. Sure, it's laughable, because New Japan hasn't really been strong style in years. How many Western viewers are going to know that? All Japan ran a similar angle with Katsuhiko Nakajima that was a big hit for a short spell. What it would require in AEW, though, would be less emphasis on New Japan, a promotion most non-Japanese fans barely keep track of on a good day anymore, and a much heavier emphasis on a darker, more focused Moxley, making plain his plan to stamp weakness out of AEW. He wants it to be the top wrestling promotion. He wants it to be a place for the strong and the dominant, and he's going to light the promotion on fire until that finally happens. Now that's a stupid angle. That doesn't sound very good. It's goofy, sure. But at least, in this scenario, he's made clear his ideology, his purpose, and what exactly prompted him to start thinking in this direction. Instead, we have a bleak, tasteless, try-hard angle exclusively for sadists and deathmatch lovers, of a gang of wink-wink nudge-nudge types constantly hinting at a supremacist idea they can't actually outright say, committing literal violent crimes. There were at least 2 asphyxiation attempts on Bryan Danielson, as well as Cesaro trying to make him a Christopher Reeve situation. More on that later. There was attempting to cripple Darby Allin. There was jumping, asphyxiating, and seemingly almost kidnapping FTR for a boiler room beatdown that gave off prison grape.
It rhymes with grape!
In Oz vibes. And most ridiculous of all, attempting to murder Orange Cassidy with what I think was window cleaner. Now the question is, how far is too far? Ganging up on and incapacitating a comedy character, then forcing his mouth open to pour window cleaner down his gullet. Put that in reality, that's literally homicide. And not even goofy smoke and mirrors horror, like some of Undertaker and Kane's stuff back in the day. Just a humiliating gangland assault and a grim murder attempt. It was stupid enough when Homicide himself did it to CM Punk's first wife, Colt Cabana, back in Ring of Honor. AEW is supposedly mainstream and big budget. They should know better. What the Death Riders are showing is that shock value does not always equal money. Many fans are so perplexed by this angle, its lack of explanation, its heavy over-pushing at the expense of every other overact on the show, and the general poor quality of its attention-grabbing antics, that it has sunk AEW's general interest to worryingly low lows. Last year, good old Bryan Danielson put together some genuinely incredible work in the ring, including epic wars with Kazuchika Okada, Zack Sabre Jr., Will Ospreay, and Swerve Strickland in an instant classic war for the world title at All In Wembley last year. They made a huge deal out of Danielson finally winning the gold in the twilight of his career, with his wife and kids watching on and supporting him, before celebrating with him in the ring after the match. It was all a great moment, and fans were eager to see what the American Dragon would do as world champ before calling it a day. His first pay-per-view defense made very clear AEW had no plans for him when they handed him Cac Puny as his first challenger, a go-away heat goober with a B, not an N, whose main claim to fame is getting lightly shoved by CM Punk due to an errant comment about glass. And that is so often the problem with AEW, as Tony Khan and friends fail to strike while the iron is hot. A mere 3 years prior, Danielson was one of the most over-performers in the whole industry until they locked him up in Blackpool Cuckold Club jail. And here, as a babyface, and despite losing most of his major matchups that year, Danielson had the crowd behind him. The first time he'd been a world champion anywhere in over 5 years. A feel-good story for a couple of months before he bowed out for neck surgery. Who would challenge him? A Will Ospreay rematch? Darby Allin? Could Powerhouse Hobbs make his long-awaited rise up the card? No! You'll get Cac Puny, and you'll like it, Mark. A man, who are we kidding? A young boy so inept, the referee had to sort his kick out for him mid-match. And then Danielson gets asphyxiated and humiliated by heel Jon Moxley, his former friend. Next month, he drops the gold to old Baldy in a cumbersome main event. Danielson is one of the most gifted technical wrestlers of his generation. Moxley, frankly, is one of the worst brawlers of the same generation, and the matches worked much more in Moxley's messy style than Danielson's slick one, neutering much of what has often made Danielson's matches so special. The result is never in question, as Danielson is written off TV after increasingly hairy Twink Yuta plastic bags him and Cesaro stomps his neck into mush. What could have been a fun veteran title run for a couple of months is left laying in the dust for an angle involving Moxley rambling incoherently, whilst not receiving any kind of punishment for attacking staff and crew members backstage on the regular. There's a lot of naff feuds we could discuss in this title run, like Orange Cassidy, the resident comedy mascot of the promotion, suddenly trying to get serious to avenge Chuck Taylor just so Moxley can get his win back on him from a year prior. But ultimately, who really wants to listen to this video for that long? I don't even want to talk for that long, good grief. Let's fast forward to his most recent feud. The artist formerly known as Edge, Cope. Two edgelords, no pun intended, desperately trying to convince us they're these batten down the hatches, no-holds-barred tough guys, grizzled bad men here to lick ass and take names. Two men better suited to hokier, funnier personas, Edge as the super sleaze rated R superstar, Moxley as a lovable goof. But no, here they try and be Bruiser Brody and Stone Cold Steve Austin, Stan Hansen and Big Evil Era Undertaker. It's laughable. And to all of those simps for these guys who'll throw a fit about what I just said, saying, "You wouldn't say that to their face, would you?" I would, if they asked, sure. This is the real world. What do you think's going to happen? The multi-millionaire celebrities are going to beat a random viewer up for expressing an opinion? Only if they want to lose a fortune in legal issues, I guess. You can't even get away with just shoving someone these days. The court of law is rigged. Anger cannot be expressed without lofty punishment. You see, I have to remind myself of this often at work, when the temptation to beat a colleague to near death and open them up with a box cutter takes hold in the afternoon sometimes. Not that I'd ever do it. Anyways, you get these loser mongoloid mercs who think no one can even critique what they watch unless they've wrestled themselves, not just for wrestling, films as well. Anyone who doesn't like Disney Star Wars seems to get shouted down by Disney marks. "You couldn't make that film." I don't think they'd want to. But anyway, this is wrestling. Star Wars sucks. Exhibit A. This retard, what the word was invented for, from a video I did on Cope the other week, my most well-viewed video. How nice for me. Now, this subhuman spaz left quite a few comments on the video. I'm not going to read them all, thankfully. We'll just read two of them, the two that I remember. So I was saying how Edge's reputation as a wrestler has gone downhill in recent years. Which, in a critical sense, artistically it has. I'm sure he makes a lot of money for AEW, which is nice. And when I say for, I actually mean from. But all the same. Here's the comment, here we go. He is not ruining his career, he is who he is, he's a veteran who took many bumps, who will forget the 3 ways, Edge, Cena, Orton, those days are gone now, he's a legend. Not a single mark of punctuation. Shocking. There's an apostrophe actually, but that's about it. It gets better now, because the whole point of that video, and the criticism of Edge in general, not just from me, is that he's not really who he is these days, he's trying to force certain babyface characters that don't really suit his work or his career. But anyway. Thus, this is the sequel comment. Same for Jericho. Please stop shitting on our wrestling legends have ever tuck a bump. If you love Jericho that much, learn how to spell his name properly, you waste of your father's cum. My goodness me. Oh, yeah. It's times like this where I understand why people advocate for euthanasia. I really do. Now, very embarrassing story about yours truly. I have indeed taken a few bumps. I did a bit of wrestling training when I was younger and a lot more hench. And who cares? The point is I watch it like all of you do. And we all have the right to say what we do and don't enjoy watching. It's basically that simple. It's called freedom of speech. And you know what? Don't take it from me. Who the hell cares what I have to say? Take it from a man who's a huge deal in professional wrestling. Cody Rhodes, the face of the WWE champion, co-founder of AEW, has happily said viewers have every right to judge the talent and the show. He even went as far as to say he didn't care if they body shamed him, and other equally petty criticisms. Right. So I'm not going to be doing some body shaming on Cody Rhodes, the guy's in very good shape. But I am going to take the well-balanced, understanding view of the Roadster over some dickless inbred who probably plays with Bailey action figures at 45 years old. Now back to topic. These two edgelords stunk the joint out at AEW Revolution with a bumbling, arthritic brawl, with a comical ending in which a man not even in the match had to do the job. You see, you might have seen the meme going around. Captain Cope has a back issue that gets severely aggravated whenever he's in danger of potentially being pinned 1-2-3 clean in a singles match. It's better to just lie unconscious for ages like a glass-chinned schmuck, while his real-life best bud subs in to do the job to Moxley for him. This match was so bad, right? That show, AEW Revolution, very fast-paced show, full of very violent action. Suddenly, this stinkeroo of a main event comes in. The match was so bad that AEW decided to rerun it with a proper ending on Dynamite as what I can only assume as an apology of sorts to their dwindling fan base. And in a desperate bid to drum up audience interest and heat, Moxley decided to do what he does best. Mutilate himself. Cope is now the holder of Janus. For all you 2010 TNA fans out there, I'm told there's about half a dozen of you. Abyss's nail board that he attempted to murder Rob Van Dam with, you know. When Van Dam had to give up the TNA World title, only to return on the same show. A new champion was decided in his absence. What did Marky D call him? No job rub? Yeah, that. Cope hits Mux with the nail board, and then suplexes him directly onto it. This broke skin. Moxley was in plain as day agony, hobbling around the ring, making sure everyone got a nice juicy shot of the board now buried into his punctured flesh. This is not professional wrestling, this is mental illness. Wrestling in general, very dangerous, sure. Blading is an accepted practice, fine. But every week with this guy, every match he's getting cut up, tortured, busted open on nothing moves. There was that time he let El Desperado stab chopsticks into his scalp. There's always something. And then there's always Renee Young. Remember when people pretended that lady knew how to commentate? Lightly complaining about it online, while seemingly being turned on by the sickening repeat wounds of her unhinged hubby. And now he's borderline impaling himself, risking tetanus and a whole host of infections for a shrinking audience who've made clear they do not want his story to continue. The arguable ace of AEW, the leading man of the show, or at least one of the main contenders for that title. A man who's been making presumably 7 figures in professional wrestling for a good decade now, trying to be the Necro Butcher on network television. Spots such as the spike board may well drum up a little bit of interest on social media and get some people talking. But the generally negative reception to the spot is very telling. These extreme garbage match moments appeal to a very niche audience, and are toxic to mainstream growth and recognition in this day and age. People aren't exactly in awe of Moxley harming himself so grimly, they're laughing at it. Castrating any of the brutal impact he and the booking team might have been aiming for. Ultimately, whenever Moxley finally does drop the belt, it's clear AEW are hoping to have a big babyface moment with whoever the new champ is. Whether it's Darby Allin, assuming he even survives climbing Mount Everest, or Swerve Strickland getting another go with the big belt, or a fresher option like Will Ospreay, the impact of the victory simply will not land the way the promotion is hoping. While fans will of course be pleased to see something new, so many will be switched up that the new champ will have an uphill battle to regain some credibility and hype, and most importantly, some numbers for the promotion.